It's time to get unmasked. Please welcome your host, Pamela Elaine Nichols and Cheryl A.S. Haley.
Happy New Year. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the fourth show of the new year, Unmasked Real Talk Live 2024. This is a safe place where we take off our masks and get real about topics not often discussed authentically. The topics we unmask support our goal to help you overcome self-limiting beliefs of, I don't matter, or I am not enough. And sometimes it's both. Sometimes you feel you don't matter, and sometimes you feel you're not enough. Our topic today is grief's journey, navigating loss, finding healing. Our raffle today, Grief Speaks, the unspoken words only tears can hear, journaling for healing and well-being. If you are new to our show, please put in the chat so we can welcome you. If someone invited you, tell us who that person is so that we can personally thank them for sharing the love of the show. Today, we have a strong topic. Cheryl, why don't you tell us a little bit about today's topic and our guests?
Amen. Awesome. Good afternoon, everyone. As Pamela Elaine has already shared, today's show is Grief's Journey, Navigating Loss, Finding Healing. There's an anonymous quote that I want to share because when I think about our special guest, this quote so wonderfully resonated with what it is that she's going to talk to us about today. And it says, within the depths of grief lies a seed of resilience, like a phoenix rising. Turning our pain into purpose illuminates the path to healing. In sharing our stories, we navigate our journey and become beacons of strength, guiding others through the transformative landscape of grief. Today, we are privileged to have Yolanda D. Booker with us, and her profound journey is a beacon of strength and resilience. With over 2 decades of marriage, a rich educational background, and a compelling story of turning grief into empowerment, Yolanda is not only an author, but also a certified life coach and pre-licensed mental health therapist. Yolanda's narrative unfolds with the battle her son faced against cancer, leading to the creation of God's Chosen Son and the transformative Grief Speaks journal. She founded a nonprofit virtual support group to aid others in grieving. As a pre-licensed mental health therapist, Yolanda specializes in grief counseling. Yolanda, welcome to the studio. We are so privileged to have you with us here on today.
Thank you so much. I'm so privileged to be here. It's such an honor.
Wonderful. Well, we have a short time together and we're going to jump right in because believe it or not, many people have reached out to make an inquiry about today's show and it's just so timely. But we want you to share with our audience what inspired you to turn your grief into a source of strength and create a community to support others through their healing journey, and just go right in.
Sure. Thanks so much. So to turn my pain into purpose, of course, was on the heels of losing my son 10 years ago, who battled cancer so bravely. However, I felt that grief is overlooked, is misunderstood. People think that it's something that happens and then you just return to being that person that you once were. And oftentimes when you're grieving, you don't know who you are. At least that was my story anyway, because life changed. That was my youngest son. And I was used to being a mom and a wife and all of, homework and all those things that we do on a day-to-day basis. And losing my son, walking the journey with him first, and then losing him set me in a place of what I call insecurity, right? Because I didn't understand who I was. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. And so many things in my life was challenged at that time. And I felt like I wasn't the only one. I felt that people didn't understand grief and that it was important that people get support, but also be educated to a place of understanding that grief is unique. And you can't understand it from everyone else's story. It's one of those journeys that you walk on your own.
Mm,
with the help of the Lord, of course. And so I felt that, the Lord walked with me with my son and many, many losses, not just my son, but many losses. I lost my mom 23 years ago as an only child to sudden death. So grief didn't start with my son, but I felt that, you know what, Lord, I feel the Lord assigned me, to be honest, this assignment. Because if I can be honest, I don't know if this is what I would have picked. But I felt that the Lord compelled me, that I went through what I went through so that I could help someone else. And we know that, our trials are not our own and that we're saved to serve. So I'm excited that God,
mhm,
chose me for this assignment. And, journaling was my gateway
mhm,
when my son was sick. So the day my son was diagnosed with cancer, I went to the gift shop and bought a journal, and I journaled his entire journey for 6 years. And that's when I turned it into a book called God's Chosen Son. And
mhm,
from that book, because I'm a journaler and I know that journaling works and I use it in my therapeutic room as well, I wrote the Grief Speaks journal.
mhm.
And using that journal and just working with people who are hurting, and oftentimes people who, grief is vulnerable, and it's hard for us to be vulnerable. So I felt the journal would allow people that wanted to do it by themselves to be able to do it. And then we birthed Grief Speaks nonprofit so that we could do it as a community.
Yeah. I so appreciate what you've shared thus far. And one of the things as a journaler as well, there's power in the pen. And sometimes journaling allows you to write what you can't always put into words or express. But the fact
Absolutely.
of what you just said about grief, there was a bout of emotion that just came up as you were sharing, because I thought about some losses that I experienced, and something that you said is so true. You can't explain it, and you just can't explain it. It's something that you have to go through, and it's different for each person. And it's like, wow, what you said, that God turned your pain into purpose. I commend you for following the leading of the Holy Spirit, because it is so necessary in the times that we go through, because grief is a process. And
Mhm.
I've often heard people say, well, you should be over this by now. Nobody could speak to where a person's at and how they're handling that. How would you speak to a person who says, well, you experienced that loss, you should be over and done, you should just move on and continue? How would you respond to that? Because people are made to feel guilty when they're grieving.
Well, one of the things that I teach in Grief Speaks is that you have to own your feelings, and communication is everything when you're grieving. Because I want to preface, people don't say these things, I want to believe, to hurt you or to make you feel bad. But when you're hurting, the people who love you are hurting as well. And all they want to see is you feel better. And so they try to rush you along because I don't like the way you're looking. I don't like the way you're acting. I'm used to you being, and you hear that you're not what you're used to being. You're not who you used to be. And I teach that it's okay to say, I say myself, I'll use myself always, I'll never be who I once was.
Mm,
So please accept who I am and
mm,
let's ride from here, because that's a lot of pressure for me to be who I once was. I don't really know if I could ever be that person. Not that it's like a bad thing or a good thing. It's just this is who I am. And when we communicate that to people, then it really does help relationships. It
mhm,
helps us understand, and it also helps others understand, because I can say, when we don't communicate and we just get offended or we walk away, or, we don't understand ourselves. So a lot of relationships and friendships and stuff is lost because people don't understand and you don't know how to articulate it. So then it becomes, I tried to be there for you, you wouldn't let me, and a lot of things are lost. So my biggest thing is to communicate what you're really feeling and being okay with if people don't understand. That's
mhm.
not our responsibility. Our responsibility is to let people know what we're feeling. How they take it is up to them. So
Yeah,
so own your feelings. So
yeah,
often we stuff our feelings to make other people comfortable, but we're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What I hear you're saying is that it's okay to say, I'm not okay, and stop pretending that we're okay when we're not okay. That's
Absolutely.
that's,
Look, take the mask off, right?
Yolanda, you said you have a book, Grief Speaks.
Yes.
And what does grief say?
What does the book say? I'm sorry.
What does grief say? If your book is Grief Speaks, I'm curious to know what grief says.
So grief says whatever you needed to say.
mm,
Mm.
So in that book, it's a prompted journal and it asks some really simple questions. You can use it for children, simple questions like, what's the one thing that you miss? What's the one thing that made you laugh about your loss? Because again, it's unique to each person. So I can only say what grief says for me, and you can only say what it says for you. And we may have some commonalities, but even if we don't, it doesn't make either of us wrong or right.
Yeah, that's really powerful. You said when did you laugh? Grief made you laugh. Did you say that?
So one of the things, what made you laugh about the person that you lost?
Uh,
Those moments those memories, right? Because
mm,
just that one thought can shift your mood for the day. That one thought can
mhm,
shift how you're feeling in that moment. And, Cheryl, what you said about, there's power in the pen,
mhm.
but there's also power in the paper because paper doesn't talk back, right? So you can really give it what you want to give it, whether you're angry, whether you're laughing, and it's not going to say a thing. It's not going to question you. It's not going to come back and say that makes no sense. It takes whatever you give it. And so there's power in paper and pen.
Mhm. Yeah.
it sounds like this is a great segue to our unmasked question. I'm anxious to get to Cheryl because I got a question for Yolanda when we bring it up.
Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. So our unmasked question for you, Yolanda, is what happens inside a person when they do not grieve?
Okay, so what usually happens and what we find the most is grief hurts. So people suppress it, right? What we call avoidance. So we avoid it with all costs because it hurts. And I
Mm,
often say, like, anything that I do for grief, people want to be there, but it's never a sold out show because we have to face our pain. And that's difficult. And so what happens in a person is that we try to bury it so deep down so that we don't have to face it. But
mm,
please understand that anything that you suppress will come up again. So when we don't face it, we face dealing with it over and again, even though but we will deal with it. When we suppress it, we deal with it from a different perspective when it comes up. One of the analogies I use all the time is that when you stuff anything, we're like a leaky faucet, a cup under a leaky faucet, drop by drop it
mm,
will fill up again. And when it fills up again, what happens? We overflow. That's when we are emotionally imbalanced. That's when we can't pull ourselves together. That's when we feel like we're crazy. And all of those things that we hear because now we're overflowing. The body and the mind can only hold the capacity but so much. So at
yeah.
some point, it's going to overflow. But if we face it and face it head on, right? Very vulnerable, very upfront in our face, then those are the moments that get us to the next moment because it probably will be a next moment, but you won't face it in the same way. You won't face it with defeat. You won't face it where you really get to a point that you're like, okay, I'm feeling up. Like you actually get to recognize and expect, so you're not blindsided. Oh, I'm filling up again, right? And I can let this out so we dump the cup and we come back and we wait and
Mm,
we work through life and it'll fill up again. But I always I always refer to that fill up is what we get when we get that lump in our throats, right?
yes.
When you get that lump and you can't swallow it and you can't spit it out, you don't know what to do with it. But if
Yeah.
you face it, then Okay, I faced it today. And guess what? I may have another one tomorrow, but it won't be the same. It won't compile, I guess I'm trying to say. When
Mhm.
we so what happens inside of us is that we live with this dark space that just keeps showing up.
Yeah.
And we can't heal because it keeps showing up and it's showing up as darkness. But if we face it, we have a way of like turning the blind and letting a little light in each time.
Mhm.
Where prayerfully, we're doing the work. When we go as we go through these things, we're able to see a little more light each time. And
Yeah.
then what's inside of us is still there, but it's not so dark.
Yeah. You know, Yolanda, I'm so glad that Pam asked our unmasked question and your response. And it made me think of how often we use the term people bleeding on people.
Hmm.
Never associated a person who could be suppressing grief.
Mm.
And that could be something that will cause them, because you talked about the analogy of like they just start to leak or they bleed, and grief could be the root of it, like unresolved, or that right there. I know of other terminologies or other reasons we've given, but never once did I ever think it could be associated with grief.
Absolutely. We
Oh,
because all we want to do is feel better, right? So we do whatever it takes to feel better. And sometimes those aren't the best decisions because we're ruled by our emotions. And again, I just want to preface like I'm here today and I'm honored, but I walked this thing and I made all of those mistakes too. When my mom passed away, I didn't deal with it at all. I just went back to being a mother and a wife. But I
mm,
promised myself that when my son passed, that I would process it all. And I can't say that was all successful and all was saved. But we learn from our experiences. And so that's my heart, is that what I went through, that I could save somebody else for, ruining relationships or whatever the thing is that they may be facing, just to understand it a little better, even if that's what they choose to do.
yeah.
I listen to what you're saying, and I can't help but think about my sister. I lost her to suicide about this will be year 3. And
My condolences.
oh, thank you. Thank you. And I think that not dealing with grief is like a slow death inside.
Mhm.
And I am probably making up my own confession here because I feel like there's a little slow death going on because dealing with her death is something I have not dealt with.
Mhm.
This is not a therapy session. I'm just being this is unmasked. I'm being very, very honest here, transparent that when I listen to what you're saying, I'm reflecting on my own experience and thinking, yeah, I'm that person that's not dealing with it. And I can tell that there's a slow deterioration. Um, and if I don't want that deterioration, I think I'm going to have to. I think I'm going to have to process. I'm going to have to get your journal. So, Kayla, please put my name in the raffle so that I may
So
win
sad.
the.
And not cannot win next to it, right?
I appreciate the way that
Yeah.
you've explained it. You bring a perspective to grief that I've never heard before,
Mhm.
To
and
God be
hopefully
the glory.
that's yeah, hopefully that's helping I'm sure it's helping many of our um,
Mhm.
viewers, which is a nice segue here to our 3 takeaways or resources that you want to share, Yolanda.
Sure. My resources is, again, one resource I will always say is seeking counseling. You don't have to do it alone. You don't. And let me say, individual counseling is not for everyone, and we understand that.
Mhm.
But it's something about knowing that I'm not by myself and that what I'm feeling is not my own. So seek out a counselor, a therapist. Guess what? You still have the power. If you feel like that doesn't work, then don't go anymore. But you don't know unless you try. Don't try to do it by yourself. We also, again, have Grief Speaks Community Support Group, and that is actually hybrid. We do online and in the building, on 12th Church Street. So, I bring us all in the room together. And the one thing that I get all the time is that it just feels good to know that it wasn't just me.
Mhm.
One of the other takeaways again would be the grief journal or journal on your own. Get a book. It can be a notebook, anything. Your phone. People even video journal. Some people don't like to write or hands can't do it. Turn your camera on and videotape yourself.
Mhm.
But journal it out. Get it out. You need to have a release for it. Grief Speaks Journal is available on Amazon as well. And so, that's one way to get out what you're feeling. And it's vulnerable, but you don't have to worry about anyone judging you. You don't have to worry about anybody questioning you. You can do whatever it takes for you to do on your own until you're ready to do something different.
Mhm.
And lastly, um, healing bomb therapy is a individual it is I'm sorry. I work for them as well as a therapist. It is a therapy group that takes insurance. And again, I would advise, I said healing bomb, but I advise everybody turn over your insurance card, call your member services and ask them what are your benefits for behavioral health. L- Listen, take care of your mental like we take care of our physical. So often we say things like, I don't have money for that. I can't do that. But listen, if you stomp, I say this all the time. If you stomp your toe or you twist your ankle, you're going to the hospital and you're going to pay the copay and you're going to let them reset it and you're going to wear a cast and you're going to go to the orthopedist. You're going to do everything you need to do to get that foot right because you need it. Guess what? It all starts in the mind. So
Mm.
if we don't take care of our mind, so there's no such thing as I don't have money for that because we make money for that because we want to be healthy and everything starts at the mind. So
Mm.
take care of yourself and call. You'd be surprised. Also, most jobs have EAP programs, employee assistance programs that'll give you free services for therapy. Like some of them give you 6, some of them give you 9. It depends on the program. But listen, tap into your resources to help yourself. So
Mm.
often we look for other people to help us. And that's one of the reasons, like even for me with Grief Speaks, um, I come as a griever. I come grieving my son and my mom and everybody else that I've lost. I don't usually come, I'm not dressed up. I don't do because I want you to know I'm fighting the same battle.
Yeah.
I'm a therapist and I have
Mhm.
a therapist
Mm.
Yeah. Thank you.
because
Thank you.
I need to be able to process my own outside of the clients that I have, right? So
Yeah.
please just in 2024, invest in yourself. Invest in your mind like we invest in so many other things. And I'm guilty. I got the bags, the clothes, to everything. But I had to make up my mind that when everything else was gone, my mind is still with me and I need it. So I had
Mm.
to depend on the Lord and I had to depend on the people that God has designed to help us. So please don't try to do it by yourself. It's not
Yolanda,
necessary.
that is such good words of advice for everyone who's listening. And unfortunately, we are running out of time. We could talk to you even longer about this because there's so many more questions I have. I'm thinking, sure, we might want to do a part 2. We
If
might
she's
need to have her come
available, we
back.
would love to. Mhm.
Yeah, because
I would love to.
we just touched the surface. I mean, you went deep, but we just touched the
Yeah.
surface. I know a lot of people have a lot of questions too.
Mhm.
So let's go into the raffle because I think this is important. Kayla, why don't you hit the raffle thing, spin for us, and see who gets these wonderful gifts.
That's it.
Wow, Jackson. Yes. All right. So what we'll need to do is get Jaslyn's address and send it to you so that you can provide her with the wonderful raffle gift. Congratulations, Jaslyn.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Jazz.
Yay! We are so grateful to you, Yolanda Booker, for hanging out with us today. We also want to give a shout out to the individual who's new in the group. As someone says, I'm new. If you were invited by someone, put that in the chat very, very quickly before we have to sign off. Thank you so much, Yolanda. We want you to come back. Thank you to everyone who listened in today. We sincerely hope that today's show has touched your life in a positive way. If it has, we'd be deeply grateful if you could extend this experience to someone special in your life. Invite them to join us for our next Unmasked Real Talk Live session. When they do, ask them to mention in the chat that they were invited by and their name. It would be our joy to warmly welcome both you and your guests with a special shout out. Your effort in sharing our core message that you matter. And you
Yes.
are enough. Not only makes you an incredible person, but also plays a crucial role in helping others discover their own worthiness. So we got to get out of here. Thanks again, Yolanda. Thanks for everyone watching. Bye, Cheryl.
All right.
Bye.